Because he used to have casino. But he's not wrong. The whole world has become a casino.
Yeah, because he's making it a casino.
Well, he certainly has contributed, yes.
Contributed?
Bill, you think poly market wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Donald Trump? I think it would anyway.
I'll tell you what, it would absolutely exist. Okay. And I want to know if there's any chance that you're not going to run, by the way, because I will put in a bet right now. Because that's the way the corruption works these days. It's right in your face. I don't want to see this soldier be the face of this problem. Of course, what he did is wrong. That's easy. You're making billion-dollar oil bets minutes before the president makes an announcement, and no one on the right says anything.
Here we have Chris Cuomo and Governor Wes Moore sitting across from Bill Maher, going at it on everything from political corruption to the death penalty to kids and their phones. And I'll be honest with you, this one stayed with me, because underneath all the crosstalk and audience laughs, what's really happening here is a fight over whether America still has the nerve to call out its own rot. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand on this topic. All right, let's get into it.
This was in the news. A soldier who was involved in the operation to get Maduro out of Venezuela, which was a success, by the way. Okay, we got to give success. Okay, he bet on it. He won $400,000, and they asked Trump about it, and Trump said, "The whole world, unfortunately, has become somewhat of a casino."
No irony. No irony when he said it.
Because he used to have casino.
I gotta tell you,
but he's not wrong. The whole world has become a casino.
Yeah, because he's making it a casino.
Well, he certainly has contributed, yes.
Contributed?
Well, Bill, you think poly market wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Donald Trump? I think it would anyway.
I'll tell you what, it would absolutely exist. Okay. And I want to know if there's any chance that you're not going to run, by the way, because I will put in a bet right now. Because that's the way the corruption works these days. It's right in your face. I don't want to see this soldier be the face of this problem. Of course, what he did is wrong. That's easy. You're making billion-dollar oil bets minutes before the president makes an announcement, and no one on the right says anything except Anna Paulina Luna and 2 or 3 others who should all be heroized for this, in my opinion. The corruption is so in your face. Yes, what this cat did was wrong, okay? And he's going to suffer. But he should not be the face of the problem. And people in Congress who are yapping about him when they've said nothing about these other things are the worst. And when they're trading stocks and they won't even have a vote on the bill, they are the worst. They're the worst.
We could pass a law tomorrow. Congress could pass a law tomorrow doing what you did. They could pass a law tomorrow preventing themselves from trading stocks. They're not doing it. They're not even bound by the employment discrimination laws that they've passed for everyone else. And we don't hold them accountable. We're just like, oh, I guess Congress just puts out press releases and holds hearings and we fight over gerrymandering. Like, put the pressure where it belongs, not on the courts of whether they're going to uphold or strike this down. That is a statutory question, which means it's up to Congress.
How many people, if you did a survey, would even know who the congressperson is? One guy applauded. I didn't even know what, I don't know if it was like, I do, or it was like, yeah, you're right, Bill. I don't know.
Well, their new approval rating is at 10%, and I would love to meet someone in the 10%. Who's like, yeah, they're crushing it out there.
It's them. It's them. That's who it is. It's them and the donuts. That's who it is.
Okay, so what you just watched is Cuomo doing something that almost never happens on panels like this. He redirected the outrage. A soldier bet on a military operation he was personally involved in, won $400,000, and the whole country was lined up to make him the villain of the story. And Cuomo said no. He said this soldier should not be the face of this problem. He said the face of this problem is the people in Congress who are screaming about the soldier while they themselves are trading stocks in industries they directly regulate and won't even bring a vote to the floor to stop it. He named the oil bets being placed minutes before presidential announcements. He named the Congress members who are exempt from the employment discrimination laws they passed for everyone else. And then Bill Maher, and I want you to notice this, Maher's only real pushback is basically, well, we don't hold Congress accountable, which is true. But that's not a counter-argument, that's an admission. He just agreed with Cuomo's entire point and called it a different problem. Keep that in mind, because the same thing is about to happen again.
A firing squad, they're dead in a second.
That's right.
What they do now is this chemical thing where they kind of just put you out. You know, it's the Nora Jones music
It can take
is
close
playing.
to
It's like a spot. Right, that's really. And then half the time, the shit they put in you doesn't work.
It takes a really long time to put someone to death. We have people watching it.
It's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Can I offer a different perspective?
Yes, please.
Just while we're all lining up to shoot people in the head.
I'm just saying, if you're going to do it, that's the way.
I think that there's an aspect of the death penalty that should matter, which is what is the social instruction? And I think that the reason they're doing this is that this administration is very embracing of brutality. He has a very misplaced sense of macho, this president. And yeah, we're just going to shoot you in the head is some kind of attempt to be tough. And it's not tough. It's weak. And I think these kinds of instructions, look, this is the same story for all of our families. My family came to this country because they thought it was a place that was going to be better, that it was beautiful for opportunity, where they would have a chance, where they didn't have to worry about the oppression they had at home. That's not what we are with these kinds of things. If you want the death penalty, fine. It doesn't work, okay? It doesn't deter crime.
Well, it deters that criminal.
It is, yeah, it does, but it gives an instruction that death is okay, that murder is okay, killing is okay. It's not murder technically, killing is okay. I think the social instruction matters. I think when you're saying, yeah, we'll just shoot you in the head, I think it cheapens something that should be the highest value.
Where are you on the death penalty? Where is it in Maryland, and where are you personally?
In Maryland, it's banned inside of Maryland. But I do think it is an important point, because when people are talking about the death penalty as an idea of a deterrence, the reality is it's not, right? There's no data that shows that this is a deterrence for how people are going to behave or how people are going to act. But it does create a bigger thing about how are we thinking about this value? How are we thinking about what it is that we hope for and what it is that we're aspiring to? And I think about it in context of this, right? When I first became the governor, we had an absolute violence crisis within our state. I mean, Baltimore City was averaging almost a homicide a day when I first became the governor. And I was very clear that we were going to have a different type of approach, that we made historic investments in local law enforcement. We made historic investments, and we made Maryland one of the only states that actually helps to fund the U.S. attorney out of balance sheet. So if a person commits a violent crime, particularly with a firearm, I'm going to have them handcuffed in 24 hours, and we're going to make sure that crime, especially if it is a firearm crime, we're going to help to make sure that goes federal. And if you look at the results, we've now seen how the violent crime rate in Maryland is down nearly 50%. It's the fastest drop in the entire country. The last time the homicide rate was this low in Baltimore City, I wasn't born yet.
This is where the conversation shifts, and it gets more interesting, not less. The death penalty debate kicks off with Maher actually making a decent case for firing squads on pure efficiency grounds. And I'll give him that one technically. Lethal injection protocols have genuinely been a legal and logistical mess for years. But then Cuomo pivots hard. He says the real issue isn't the method, it's the message. He says, and these are his words, it gives an instruction that death is okay, that killing is okay. He's arguing that state-sanctioned execution shapes the culture's relationship with violence, not just the criminal in front of the needle. That is a philosophical argument, and you can agree or disagree with it. But then Governor Moore steps in and does something sharper. He doesn't just philosophize, he pulls the receipts. He says in Maryland, the violent crime rate is down nearly 50%, the fastest drop in the entire country. The last time Baltimore's homicide rate was this low, he wasn't born yet, and Maryland abolished the death penalty. He's not arguing theory, he's arguing outcomes. And the reason that matters is because Maher spent the first part of the segment basically suggesting toughness equals deterrence. Moore just showed you a state that went the other direction and got better results. That's the whole argument. And now what comes next is the part of this conversation that actually tells you what kind of leaders these guys think America needs right now.
This week, Governor, Los Angeles became the first major school district to require screen time limits. We are? The first? Okay, they did another country. Australia did it, but I guess they're not here. What's your approach in Maryland? Yeah, where were you on screen time?
Well, I know we actually have legislation that's just works its way through Maryland that I will be signing that's actually going to do a ban-to-ban, a bell-to-bell ban on devices for our kids.
There's a school in Houston, by the way, that got a metal grinder, and if your kid is caught with any screen, their phone out during the school day at all, they put it ceremonially into the metal grinder, and it just goes in, and that's the end of your phone.
That's the end of your phone.
Yeah.
Well, it's just saying, here's
that's
the thing.
a deterrence.
It is a deterrence. But our families and our teachers are going through enough right now. Right, we've had, especially post-COVID, we now have a teacher shortage that is vast, and we've been really focusing on getting more educators in the classroom, getting more men of color inside of the classroom. We have cut the teacher vacancy rate in half in the state of Maryland, and a lot of those federal workers have been fired. We started something called our Feds to Eds, which is actually saying if you're a federal worker who's been fired, if you're working for the NIH and you have a degree in physics and you want to be a physics teacher, we're going to get you certified, we're going to get you qualified, we're going to get you in a classroom as quickly as possible. We've cut the teacher vacancy rate in half inside of the state of Maryland. I do not want our teachers fighting with Mark Zuckerberg for our kids' attention. And so I want to make sure that we're focusing our kids are locked on task.
Any parent, okay, so I had kids in a great public school out where we live. Nothing has made a bigger difference than them pulling the phone. And if there was one fight that I could redo, that I totally blew. I mean, the list is long, but this one, if I could get this one back, I would have never given them the phone. I would have never given them the smartphone. Never. Not until they were 55 years of age.
We'll leave it there. Thank you, everybody.
Here's what this whole conversation was really about, and it's not corruption or the death penalty or phones in classrooms. It's about whether the people in charge are actually willing to do the hard thing instead of the performative thing. That is the thread that runs through every single clip you just watched. Start with the corruption segment. Cuomo's central point was that a soldier who made a reckless bet should not be the symbol of American political corruption when you have members of Congress placing trades in defense companies while sitting on the Armed Services Committee, when you have billion-dollar oil bets landing minutes before a presidential announcement and not one person on the right says anything, except, as Cuomo named them specifically, Anna Paulina Luna and 2 or 3 others. Let that land. He named names. He named the specific behavior. And the response from Maher, who was supposed to be the skeptic in the room, was basically to agree that Congress is the problem and then shrug and say, we don't hold them accountable. That is not a rebuttal. That is a concession dressed up as cynicism, and the audience clapped for Cuomo, not Maher. That tells you something. The death penalty exchange is where it gets philosophically messy, but the data side of it is actually pretty clear. Maher opened by defending firing squads as cleaner and faster than lethal injection. Okay, that's a process argument. Cuomo turned it into a values argument. He said executing people sends a social instruction that killing is acceptable, that it cheapens human life as the highest value. You can think that's too abstract, a lot of people will, but Maher grounded the whole thing in something you cannot argue with. Maryland ended the death penalty, invested in targeted law enforcement, funded the federal prosecutor's office out of the state budget, and watched Baltimore's homicide rate drop nearly 50%, the fastest reduction in the country. The last time it was that low, the governor of Maryland had not yet been born. So if your argument for the death penalty, and that is the primary argument, Maher just showed you a state that abandoned it and got a lower murder rate. You cannot say deterrence works and then ignore that data. Pick one. Either deterrence is the goal, in which case you need to explain Maryland, or deterrence was never really the point, in which case just say that and we can have a different conversation about justice and punishment and what we think the state is entitled to do, but you don't get to have it both ways. And then the phone segment. On the surface, this feels like a pivot away from the heavy stuff. It's not. Think about what Maher actually did here. He announced that Maryland is passing a bell-to-bell ban on devices in schools. He cited teacher shortages and the post-COVID learning crisis. And then he did something that almost no politician does on television. He got personal. He said he gave his kids smartphones too early, and if he could get that decision back, he would have never done it, not until they were 55 years old. The crowd went crazy, and the reason they went crazy is not because it was a joke, it's because it was honest. That's the thing regular Americans actually respond to, and it's the thing that has been missing from political conversation for so long that when someone does it, it hits like a truck. And here's the thing. All three segments of this conversation have the same shape. There is a surface problem and a structural problem underneath it. The soldier bet is the surface problem. Congressional insider trading and prediction market corruption is the structural problem underneath it. The lethal injection process is the surface problem. The failure of punitive deterrence as policy is the structural problem underneath it. Screen time in schools is the surface problem. An education system that is hemorrhaging teachers, bleeding student attention, and operating in a post-pandemic environment without adequate reform, that is the structural problem underneath it. Cuomo and Maher kept forcing those deeper questions.
Now, Maher kept skating on the surface and framing it as pragmatism. Now, who had the stronger night? I'm not going to sit on the fence here. Maher won this conversation. Not Cuomo, though Cuomo was sharp. Maher. Because Maher is the one who showed up with actual outcomes and personal conviction at the same time. He came with the numbers, the 50% crime drop, the have-teacher vacancy rate, the feds to eds pipeline, turning fired federal workers into classroom teachers. And then he closed with something real. He sat there on national television and admitted he blew it with his kids in the phones. That combination, policy plus accountability plus humility, is so rare in American politics right now that it stands out like a floodlight. Maher made one genuinely good point all night, which is that Congress could pass a stock trading ban tomorrow if they actually wanted to. That is true and it matters, but he spent most of the time being the smartest skeptic in the room instead of engaging with what the other two are actually putting on the table. The audience noticed. Watch the applause in the clips. It tells you the whole story. And I'll leave you with the question that this entire conversation is circling without quite saying out loud. America keeps talking about accountability for soldiers who bet on military ops, for Congress members trading stocks, for states choosing how to punish people, for parents handing 8-year-olds smartphones. But here is the real question that I want you to sit with. If a politician came to you tomorrow with actual data showing their policies worked, lower crime, better schools, less corruption, but they required you to give up the emotional satisfaction of harsher punishments and louder outrage, would you take that deal? Or do we want the feeling of consequences more than we want the results? Answer that honestly. Drop it in the comments.